the second weekend is here. People are trying to figure out how will the Mario movie do in the second weekend. Can it perform as well as Frozen 2 despite the fact that Frozen 2 was on a Thanksgiving week? Well, we're going to find out, and in large part that is going to tell us, will this be the biggest animated film in history? Is it, in fact, the transfer of the crown from Disney to Illumination? Not all things are bad for Disney. The Mandalorian had a very good week in the ratings for Nielsen. We'll talk about it this weekend. But for now, the box office is looking a little bad for the House of Mouse and a little glad for everybody involved in the Nintendo cinematic universe. Explaining entertainment, keeping you ahead of the culture curve. It's what we're trying to do each and every day here on the WDW Pro channel, giving you a little dose of truth in an industry that does not like it. But if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms when you click it. We're talking about that notification bell. All right, diving straight in, we are looking at the potential that Mario and the Nintendo cinematic universe has not only taken the crown from Disney in terms of animation and family feature-length films, but also that, in fact, it may have historically taken the crown from Disney. We'll look at that. The latter of those two options is a bit more tenuous. But before we start, let's take a look at what Mario has done so far. This is coming to us from nexttv.com by Daniel Frankel. It says, Universal continues to crush Disney in animation with huge $377 million Super Mario Bros. Movie opening. Universal's Illumination unit continues a steady stream of hits, while streaming distracted Disney and Pixar have lost traction. Now, note here that I'm not sure that's actually the reason that Disney and Pixar have lost traction. I would much more argue that Disney and Pixar, as well as Disney Animation Studios, have lost traction because they have lost the target audience. And the target audience that they have lost have left because Disney decided to go divisive. Whenever you create content that is divisive, you divide your potential consumer base. And Mario, well, despite the shrieking of the pundits out there, despite the intelligentsia being quite upset, it does not seem to have divided audiences at all. It's hard to fathom that Mario has divided audiences when it is conquering the box office in the way that it is. It's Comcast Universal's Pictures unit and not Disney that wears the animation crown these days. Universal's Super Mario Bros. Movie opened to $204.6 million domestically over its 5 days of release, making it this year's biggest North American theatrical premiere so far. Adding in the $173 million the movie has made internationally, the film, a collaboration, by the way, between Universal's Illumination unit and video game maker Nintendo, now has a global box office revenue total exceeding $377 million. Of course, this article is a few days old. We're using it to establish what the premise is, and then we're going to go take a look, actually diving into the numbers deeply. The Boffo theatrical opening is interesting for several reasons, not just because it reveals a bit of post-pandemic revitalization for the domestic theatrical exhibition business. For one, it shows that Comcast NBC Universal can cut windows from theatrical premiere to streaming debut on Peacock down to just 7 weeks, as it did recently with Knock at the Cabin, and still open its movies big. But maybe even more notable is the fact that, according to Lightshed Research Partners analyst Richard Greenfield, Universal now wears the animation crown. It no longer belongs to Disney. What a seismic shift inside the entertainment industry. It's hard to imagine a bigger shift than Disney, the ruler of family animated feature films for generations. We're not talking decades, we're talking generations here, that now that crown has been taken from them. You won't hear much out of the access and legacy media quite yet about that. We have to search a little bit to find people who are willing to say it, but the facts stand on their own. Now, here's what Rich Greenfield said. He says, there's nobody other than Bob Iger who knows what the plan is. We're all waiting to hear what Iger's plan is. He's got to get animation back on track. If you think about what Universal has done, Disney's been crushed animation-wise. What a huge thing to say.
Floral, it's time for you to walk the plank.
What? Why?
Because you haven't subscribed to WDW Pro yet. Nor bookmark thatparkplace.com on your web browser to get great articles from great contributors.
What?
Universal and Illumination, which the studio co-owns along with the Super Mario Brothers movie producer Chris Meledandri, are coming off last summer's blockbuster success of Minions: The Rise of Gru, which generated nearly $940 million at the global box office. Now, let's think about that for a moment, because the $940 million at the global box office out of Minions: The Rise of Gru is actually more impressive than you might think. Yes, $940 million, approaching $1 billion in what the entertainment intelligentsia likes to call the post-pandemic or pandemic era. Well, that seems like a big deal. But in reality, when you consider that Minions: The Rise of Gru had a production budget around $100 million, you can see that the revenues off of this, the profits off of this, are absolutely gonzo. Meanwhile, Disney Pixar's last hit came in 2019 with Toy Story 4, and Next TV is being a little kind here. Next TV is not mentioning that the latest animated feature films from Disney, well, they did exceedingly poor. And so, let's think about that. Lightyear had a production budget somewhere between $200 and $250 million, and it flopped at the box office because it could not rise to anywhere even close to approximating Minions: The Rise of Gru. You also had Strange World, which is one of the worst flops of all time for the Walt Disney Company. And you had those in the same year. Meanwhile, the Little Minions, well, they're making almost $1 billion. And it turns out that making content that is non-divisive, it pays real dividends to the company that's willing to do it. It's crazy to us, to me at least, that Disney has decided that they're going to go full on with this ideological stuff where they're pumping content into children's programming, which parents may not fully approve of. It's not even that parents might disapprove of the material being presented, although some certainly do, but it's also that parents don't want to have to broach some of these topics that Disney is inserting into children's programming for kids that are 4, 5, 6 years old. Parents don't want to have to explain some of this stuff on the ride home from the box office. No, they would rather be talking about the Happy Meal and going to get a toy from Walmart or Target. That's what parents want. Greenfield retweeted his January appearance on CNN's Squawk Box, during which he wondered if Disney was too distracted trying to compete on the broad-reaching programming level of Netflix to remain relevant in the more specialized area of family animation. If you think about what Universal Studios has done in animation over the last couple of years, relative to Disney, Disney's been crushed animation-wise, and that's just a big problem. All right, pretty good article out of Daniel Frankel over here on Next TV. You can click on the link to go over here and check that out. Now let's see how the folks behind Mario are celebrating this. This from People by Jen Janot. Chris Pratt celebrates Super Mario Brothers movie success with family trip. Says he's unbelievably grateful. Thank you to everyone who checked out the Super Mario Brothers movie this weekend. He addressed fans on Instagram of this past Tuesday. Chris Pratt is celebrating one-upping his career with the Super Mario Brothers movie. After the animated film based on the popular Nintendo video game franchise became a worldwide hit over the weekend, Pratt, who voices protagonist Mario in the movie, marked the occasion with a post on Instagram. And don't you love this? Because Chris Pratt, once one of the most beloved actors in Hollywood, took on his faith, I guess, slightly publicly, right? Everybody knows he's a Christian at this point, and that he goes to church and that sort of thing. And there are those in the media who just absolutely despise Chris Pratt. And so we have seen a concerted campaign over the last months sliming Chris Pratt and saying that his voice is terrible, he's not going to be good Mario, and whining and complaining about him even before we had the chance to really see the movie, which you would think would be a precursor or a predicated event that you would need before you could assess the actual job he was doing. Well, it turns out that audiences must really like the job that he's done so far. The audience reviews of the movie are fantastic. And so we could, I suppose, suspect to see Chris Pratt in this role now for 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 years. And the people who have said that Chris Pratt is washed up, he doesn't have major Hollywood projects on the horizon, well, they're just crazy. But that's no surprise because they've been crazy all the way leading up to this point. After the animated film based on the popular Nintendo video game franchise became a worldwide hit over the weekend, Pratt, who voices protagonist Mario in the movie, marked the occasion with a post on Instagram. In his Tuesday post, Pratt, 43, posted a series of photos from an outdoor getaway with his brother and the latter's girlfriend, in which the Guardians of the Galaxy star could be seen bonding with wildlife and enjoying the great outdoors. Don't you love that? Celebrating the biggest animated feature film release ever by bonding with wildlife. Now that's a guy. Thank you to everyone who checked out the Super Mario Brothers movie this weekend. He began his caption. If you haven't yet, do. And you can see right here, there's, wait a minute. Okay, that's not wildlife, that's a lamb. All right, folks. I'm sometimes okay. This is just an example. No hate towards Jen, the author of this article, but wildlife is not livestock, and that's a lamb. All right. Okie dokie. Here we go. Pratt continued to celebrate. I held a baby goat. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not a lamb. It's a goat. No little horns. You're cute. See, eggs on my face too now, and I'll keep it in the video just so you guys know. I don't get things right all the time, but yes, he's a cute little baby goat. Good job, Chris. Pratt continued to celebrate. I held a baby goat, caught a couple bass, found a blacktail shed, drank some coffee, and hung out with my bro in the A-frame he and his girlfriend Lindsay refurbished. Got teased because Lindsay actually found the shed, not me, but I took a picture like I found it. Am I jealous? Yes. But would I tell her that? No. And then here's why the media cannot stand him. He concluded by sharing a Bible verse. Psalm 23, he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me to still water. And he has named his ranch Stillwater Ranch, clearly a reference to the Bible. And so that's really why they just despise him so much. The Parks and Recreation alum also shared a message of gratitude to his Instagram story on Monday, which began, wow, so unbelievably grateful. And it continues on. Of course, all of the actors behind the Mario movie surely are feeling just as grateful and excited. Still cracks me up. I'm taking on this author and saying, come on, that's not wildlife, that's livestock. I at least got that right. And it's like, oh, that's not a lamb, that's a goat. Come on, bro. But yeah, the Mario movie is doing fantastic, and the haters, they're just wrong. Now, here's what we want to know, though. We want to know how well this is going to do in the future. Like, does it hold on to this crown? Can it be the biggest movie, talking about animated movies, of all time? Can it hold that? Currently, yes. But can it maintain it? Well, that's more difficult. And so right here, we're on thenumbers.com. Again, that link also in the description if you want to check it out. And we can see that the worldwide box office is just staggering. $444 million as of Friday morning, as we're recording this. And that is just incredible. That is essentially a week and a half, one single weekend, though, only one weekend in the books. And it's already approaching $500 million at the worldwide box office. If you assume that this movie has a traditional hold for feature-length films, and particularly for Illumination, then you would have to say that this is on its way to making $1 billion and possibly going far beyond it. The caveat here is that we don't know, did video gamers come out in droves? Did they front load this thing hugely? Well, we won't know that yet, but one thing that we are looking at is we're taking a look at the drop-offs for this week. And so these numbers here that are in pink, this is the weekend that we just saw, which was incredible. I mean, you had back-to-back days above $50 million in revenue. That's domestic, but that's incredible. Now, the days coming after that, though, the days subsequent, we've got Monday at 20 million. That's a 42% drop. We've got 15 million, which is a 23% drop from that. And then we've got 10 million for Wednesday, which is a 30% drop. Now, we don't like seeing the number there for Wednesday. That 10 million's a little low. What we want to see, though, is we want to see, can this movie manage to drop 50%, somewhere in that range from first weekend to second weekend? And you might say, well, movies lately have been dropping more than that. And that's true. But in order for this to be the biggest movie of all time, it's going to need to do some things like that. And let's show you why. We're going over now to what was previously the leader in this category, Frozen 2 from 2019. And if we look at this, what happened with Frozen 2 was very unique, let's say. Frozen 2, internally, Disney was worried about this movie. However, once it was released, it received one of the strangest assists in becoming huge that you'll ever see. And that is that families wanted to go see the movies. Remember, this is before anything happened worldwide. But families wanted to go see movies for the holidays. This came out around Thanksgiving. And, of course, then that leads into Christmas. Families wanted to go see movies, as they always do during that holiday season. More so probably then than now, given what we've been through. However, the big movie that was supposed to dominate that year simply did not. And that was The Rise of Skywalker, or as some call it, The Rise of Palpatine. As a result, because it came in hundreds of millions of dollars, I mean, a lot, under what one would have expected to see, well, that opened up the runway for Frozen 2 because families were deciding, and those are both really family films, right? Star Wars is a family film experience. Frozen 2 is a family film experience. Families decided to start going to see Frozen 2 instead. And that was something. That was a big, big deal. But let's take a look at this real quick. So after the first weekend for Frozen 2, we went into Thanksgiving week, and that skews this a little bit. But you can see that Frozen 2 actually performed better in its hold during that Thanksgiving week. Again, we know that's not a normal week, but you can see that it dropped only down to 12 million. And this is key here. So dropping to 12 million means that it came in at its lowest point for that first week of existence at 12, whereas Mario came in at around 10. We're back to domestic, remember that. And then it rose back up for Thanksgiving week. But here's the key thing to watch. So if we look at the first weekend for Frozen 2 and we look at the second weekend from Frozen 2, we see that it essentially held at about a 50% level. Now, if Mario can do the same, then it remains on track to beat Frozen 2 overall domestically. I think worldwide, we have yet to see what's going to happen, and that's simply because of something that's not being reported widely in all of the media. But if you've been watching this channel, you know that for Mario, there's this very strange thing out there. That strange thing is that Mario will receive huge box office revenues, way beyond what you would expect from any other movie out of Japan and out of South Korea. Neither one of those secondary markets has opened up to it yet. So although it is a worldwide release for Mario, it's really not a worldwide release quite yet. And yes, Frozen 2 also didn't open worldwide in terms of being in every single location everywhere. But the places it didn't open, well, it's definitely not the same as the connection between Mario and Japan, the land from which Mario comes. You could expect to see box office returns out of Japan that could be unlike anything we've ever seen out of that country for a movie as they go to support their favorite mascot. But in order for Mario to be the #1 animated film, it has to beat this 3-day second weekend from Frozen 2. It's got to beat it. If it doesn't, then what we'll see is that it may in the end come up short of Frozen 2. However, if we see Mario coming in with a 40% drop, then oh my gosh, we are looking at something huge. I don't want to give it a comparison to what it could be like. I'll just say that it would be, well, it would put even greater fear into Disney if that happens, and it would cause Illumination and Nintendo to be exceedingly happy. It's also worth noting here that Nintendo, we have found out, has put some major skin in this game, and we've had some information about the financial situation behind this, the backing, the contractual way that this works. And so we have discovered that Nintendo now has a 50% profit sharing once this movie becomes profitable, and that's because Nintendo apparently put maybe $100 million into the movie. And that makes them truly a legitimate partner with Illumination. This is not an Illumination film where the license was handed over to Illumination to take it and run. This is one where Nintendo is an active partner, equally participating and approving of this all along the way. And that has proven to be very successful. If that continues on with future Nintendo Cinematic Universe movies, i.e. Zelda, i.e. Metroid, i.e. Punch-Out, and all those others, well, this could be a heck of a deal. The question will be, I guess, in that situation, can Nintendo work at the speed and the pace that would be necessary to maintain a Nintendo Cinematic Universe? We suspect that over the next decade, if our sources are correct, that we will see all of these properties eventually culminating with a huge crossover in an Avengers-style film that is likened to the Super Smash Brothers video game, where all the characters come together and fight across sort of a metaverse of the Nintendo universes, the galaxies, as they may have been referred to and alluded to in the Mario movie. Well, if we're going to get to that point, Nintendo, if they're going to keep this sort of creative control, they're going to have to work in lockstep with Illumination. Can they maintain the bandwidth? I'll tell you one thing, if Mario turns out to be the biggest animated feature film of all time, if it holds that crown, even after this first weekend and second weekend, well, then you're going to see a whole lot of effort made to make that indeed happen. The one good news for those of you who have not heard this before, if you're worried about Nintendo letting Mario change and become some kind of thing that it is not, if you're worried about their other properties going woke or becoming divisive like Disney, I would not fret too much, because what we have learned, of course, is that Nintendo is looking at this very differently than Hollywood. Whereas Hollywood looks at the movie and goes, oh my gosh, this is record-breaking. This is the biggest animated film so far. It's the biggest release ever. Nintendo is looking at this and saying, oh, well, we're probably closing in on $1 billion sometime in the future. That's cute. The Mario games just by themselves on the Nintendo Switch have earned $9.1 billion. And so you can kind of see that one of these industries is larger than the other. The video game industry is big, and Nintendo is a big player in it. And so when Nintendo steps into the box office game, and they have, this is a little bit smaller than what they're used to, even if for Hollywood, this is very, very big. And that means Nintendo continues to have all of the leverage. And if you thought they lost any leverage going into this, think again, because after the results, everybody in Hollywood wants to emulate what Nintendo is doing. Well, except for the ideologues. They're having a hard time with this. Well, folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms. When you click it, we're talking about that notification bell. The Pro Show is 5 to 7. That's Eastern Time on Thursdays, and we have memberships open. Folks, if you want more exclusive content, if you want to be able to give your voice and your opinion and pick the topics here on the channel, as well as some other really cool stuff, check out that join button and see if you might want to become a member. You can look at all the different levels and perks that come with it, and we think for a price of a soda, you would really love being a member. All right, that's it for now. Will this be, historically, the end of Disney's domination for generations of animation? Well, we're going to find that out, but it certainly has the possibility of doing so. It may be more than just a movie, which became the biggest animated film of all time. It may be a signal that for another decade out there, Pixar and Disney Animation Studios have truly lost their way in becoming number one or maintaining number one, and it looks like Illumination is going to continue quite the streak going forward, and that has all of them saying, wahoo! All right, wherever you are, whatever you're doing on this beautiful upcoming weekend, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.